Today, we set it straight on the Southern Poverty Law Center. Many people know it as an organization that once fought for civil rights in America. That was back in the 1970s. Now, in 2017, it's pledging to destroy groups that it says spreads lies about gays, transgenders, and lesbians. Dale Hurd has more.
Once upon a time, the Southern Poverty Law Center served as a champion in the civil rights struggle. It's said that the SPLC helped put the Ku Klux Klan out of business. Klan membership used to be in the millions. Today, it's only a few thousand. But when you look at the SPLC's map of hate groups in America today, one would think America is consumed with hate. Or is it? When you've put the Klan out of business and won all your battles, but you're not ready to close your doors, you need to find new enemies to fight. You might also need to change the definition of hate. One of those new enemies is former Vanderbilt history professor Dr. Carol Swain. Swain grew up in the Old South and fought poverty and racism to become a university professor. She's an expert on white nationalism, but she's publicly attacked the SPLC, and Swain, a conservative Christian, found herself on the SPLC's hate list as, quote, an apologist for white supremacists. Other SPLC targets have included Dr. Ben Carson, who was then removed from the SPLC hate list, female genital mutilation victim Hersey Ali, and even small charities like the Ruth Institute, whose mission is to help families and children. The Ruth Institute said, if this makes us a hate group, so be it. Among the list of Christian groups on the SPLC's hate map are many local churches, usually because they oppose the gay agenda. It includes the Family Research Council. Executive Vice President General Jerry Boykin, when asked about it, doesn't pull any punches.
Well, SPLC, first of all, you need to understand, is probably one of the most evil groups in America. They've become a money-making machine, and they've become an absolute Marxist, anarchist organization.
Also on the list, the Christian legal group Alliance Defending Freedom.
They did good work many years ago, but the SPLC lost its way a long time ago.
Carrie Kupek at ADF dismissed the SPLC as a, quote, direct mail scam, but marvels at the SPLC's revenues with assets north of $300 million.
I have never heard of a group with poverty in its name that has so much money.
Apple, J.P. Morgan, and actor George Clooney are just a few who have given millions to the SPLC. There's so much money coming in that some of it's going into offshore investments. A red flag for some, but offshore investing is not uncommon among large nonprofits. What's more disturbing is what the SPLC's opponents say is a link to deadly violence against Christians and conservatives. On August 15, 2012, Floyd Lee Corkins stormed into the Family Research Council's Washington offices intending to kill. He wounded the building manager before he was stopped. A bullet hole still remains in this console. After his arrest, Corkins told the FBI where he heard about the Family Research Council.
So how did you, this building, this organization, how did you find it? Did you look it up online, or how did you know what
the Southern Poverty Law lists anti-gay groups? I found online. Okay. A little research on the website and stuff like that.
Our people that come to work here every day come knowing that just based on reality and based on what happened here, they're taking a risk.
James T. Hodgkinson, who shot House Majority Whip Steve Scalise and injured several others at a congressional softball practice this year, had liked the Southern Poverty Law Center's Facebook page. The SPLC later admitted, "We're aware that the SPLC was among hundreds of groups that the man identified as the shooter liked on Facebook. I want to be as clear as I can possibly be. The SPLC condemns all forms of violence. But after these attacks, some are asking the obvious question, does the Southern Poverty Law Center spread hate?" The SPLC did not respond to our invitation to be a part of this story and refute the claims made against it, but publicly remains unapologetic. The SPLC says their listing of Christian groups who oppose the LGBT agenda is completely unrelated to religion, Christianity, or the Bible. These groups are listed because they repeatedly lie in an effort to defame LGBT people. In 2007, SPLC spokesman Mark Potok, in this blurry video from a conference in Michigan, said,
I want to say plainly that our aim in life is to destroy these groups, to completely destroy them.
D. James Kennedy Ministries, also on the hate list, is suing the SPLC and the charitable arm of Amazon, Amazon Smile, for dropping it from its list of religious charities. The news media uses the SPLC's hate map in stories about racism and bigotry. CNN published the list under the headline, "Here are all the hate groups active in your area." 47 conservative groups and Senator James Langford have written the media demanding that it stop using the SPLC hate map as a source.
SPLC has, first of all, no authority other than what they've given themselves to have a hate map or to list people or organizations as haters.
But there's no sign the Southern Poverty Law Center is changing course. When the left supports it so strongly, much of the news media relies on it, and the donations keep rolling in.
And if Dale's reporting isn't enough to enlighten you, joining us with more is Hannah Scherlacher. She's the campus coordinator for Campus Reform. Now, Hannah has appeared on the Global Lane before, and she's just earned a spot on the SPLC watch list. Hannah, it's a hate watch list, is it not? Hate speech watch list? Good to see you again. Why are you on this list? Guilt by association or what?
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you again. So I was placed on this LGBT hate list from the SPLC because I did a radio segment with the Family Research Council. The segment was about socialism, but because the Family Research Council holds traditional family values, I was labeled an LGBT hater just for being on the show. The topic of LGBT never even came up. We were talking about socialism. So being on this list, it's just another example of the Southern Poverty Law Center slapping hate labels on anyone who dissents from the liberal narrative.
Why you and why the Family Research Council?
Like I said, the left in these groups are so quick to silence anybody with dissenting opinions. So, you know, the consequences of this are severe. We saw in 2012, a man come into the Family Research Council with 100 rounds of ammunition and 15 Chick-fil-A sandwiches, planning on killing everyone and smearing those Chick-fil-A sandwiches in their faces. And he said he was inspired by SPLC's hate map.
Now, what has happened to you since you've been on this list?
I have received a great deal of messages already, of hateful messages and threats. Thankfully, I work for an employer who's sympathetic to this injustice, but this has serious implications for my safety and my career. I mean, my name is permanently out there as a hater. And at Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, I work with students every day across the nation who face this same type of bullying just for having conservative ideas. You know, we just had students at Berkeley. They were threatened with brass knuckles and lead pipes and stalked and harassed by groups like Antifa. And the irony of all of this is that of the 917 hate groups listed on this SPLC hate list, there's not a single mention of Antifa, Resist, By Any Means Necessary, which are all domestic terrorist organizations that threaten free speech and threaten ideas and threaten students across the nation on our college campuses. So it really makes you wonder, what is their definition of hate and why do they change the definition to only fit their narrative?
Tell me about others that made the list. Tell me about them. It wasn't just FRC and you. I know Governor Sam Brownback, Trent Franks, Congressman, also on it. Who else?
So we saw last year, Ben Carson was actually on the list of extremist haters. I didn't quite make it to that list, but Ben Carson, of all people, such a gentle man, he was labeled as an extreme hater over groups like Antifa and Resist. And then we saw Dr. Carol Swain, who is an African-American Vanderbilt professor who was labeled a white supremacist sympathizer for expressing views that were contrary to the liberal agenda. She was actually calling out the hypocrisy of Southern Poverty Law Center on racism. And she was labeled a white supremacist sympathizer. It's just absurd. And it's really, at the end of the day, just a bullying tactic, and it needs to stop. I mean, people across the country, whether they're students or people in the workplace or just your regular tax-paying American, we're constantly bullied and silenced and pushed into a corner for having any views that go against the liberal narrative. And you know, it's time we push back. You know, I'm personally pushing back by calling on the Southern Poverty Law Center to remove me from this list. And I think all Americans who have been bullied by the Southern Poverty Law Center need to push back too.